the biggest lesson should be for you to understand that actually you don't know. That actually you have only learned how to ask questions. So if you have acquired the skill of inquiry, and you have acquired that qualification, why then are we not able to make the change that we want to do? So you PhD scholars, I urge you to be hungry, to be foolish, and to be the change that you want to see. So with those remarks, I want to turn to the topic which was given to me. It was rather a mouthful, and I'll talk about that. It is the Alchemy of Rigor, navigating theoretical and methodological paradoxes in PhD research. This is a keynote address, so I do not have PowerPoint presentations for you. Please listen to me. First, I have a preamble. I want to begin my address by recognizing two outstanding individuals who made a tremendous pioneering contribution to the founding of Makerere University Business School's graduate research and PhD program. These people are not here with us today, but they are Professors John Chrysostom Munene and Augustine Ahiazu, who has since passed on. So today I stand here on the shoulders of these giants who made it possible for us to realize our dream way back in 1999 when I started in the PhD program. Our cohort, which was the first to graduate from the Books PhD program in 2005, included Professors Joseph Ndai, Geoffrey Bakunda, and myself. Again, Professor Mutezi, I must tell you, please bring these people back. They have a wealth of knowledge, and I don't know why they are not here. But that is part of the confusion that has sent away these granaries of knowledge. Please rehabilitate these people and let them come back to the school and share that knowledge. So 2 decades of selfless dedication by Munene and Ahiazu have indeed blossomed into a full-blown course of academia. I have been looking at the program here, and I see so many people are going to present papers. And that is where knowledge starts, in competing for space to present ideas. When Munene and Ahiazu started their work with us as their raw materials, the mantra of publish or perish sounded like Greek. Today we can proudly say that through their efforts, the idea of research and publication has been demystified. And many of you, the MOOCs faculty and students on the PhD program, have gone on to publish and do a lot of great things. In this sense then, Munene and Ahiazu are the grand old doyens who started this good work, which will continue today. Please join me by standing up and applauding these two wise men. Thank you very much. So it is our duty to continue growing their vision and molding moral scholars who will also nurture others in turn. It is my privilege and singular honor to be back here 20 years after graduating with a PhD to give this keynote address. Now, let me turn to the subject of today. The topic I have been asked to talk about presents my first academic problem and should be a lesson to all PhD students and researchers. That is because it is, in and of itself, a complexity of things. It is a casserole, a category. There is a reference to rigor in research. One can study rigor on its own. There is the problem of theory. Theory has been a controversial subject in academic discourse, and the jury is still out on what is theory and what is not theory. Then there is a reference to methodology, which again is the subject of many academic writings. So it is not easy for me to do justice to this topic. And that should be our first lesson today as researchers, to learn the practice of parsimony. To be parsimonious in research means that we learn and adapt the quality of being frugal with the assumptions of variables we use in our research work. In this way, we can explore the research problem in more depth and with more rigor. So I will use the terms parsimony and rigor interchangeably in the context of this video. Rigor or parsimony, for that matter, means that our models should be simple. They should avoid complexity, and they should be efficient. Being simple means that our adopted theory model explains the study problem using the fewest possible assumptions of variables. Efficiency means that our research is able to achieve accurate, non-spurious outcomes with the least complexity possible, thereby increasing the explanatory power of our theories or hypotheses. Rigorous or parsimonious models are often more intuitive and easier to comprehend, and are likely to have more universal applicability beyond the specific area of interest we are studying. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the alchemy of rigor. That is clarity in defining what we are studying. So, at the PhD level and in all other research, we should attempt to achieve rigor by having a conceptual framework, which is a mental map of the bounds of our research. A conceptual framework is a set of assumptions, values, and definitions, and the relationships between those assumptions, values, and definitions. A good conceptual framework helps us achieve internal and external validity by avoiding the aforesaid complexities, i.e. by being parsimonious, through a focus on the significant variables that describe or explain the phenomenon. The research that you do may be academic or applied. And I think in the context of today's theme, we need to begin thinking about moving from pure research to applied research, or having a mix of both. So for applied research, that conceptual framework should also have relevance to the problem at hand. Rigor and parsimony are therefore the handmaids of good research. As I have said, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear me saying these words, parsimony, rigor, I learned them from those old men and family. When they first used those words, I was also aghast. Now I use them like I'm the one who invented them. I hope tomorrow you will also be using these words. Now let me turn to the research problem and philosophical paradigm. This is no small matter. The issue of the research problem and research question befuddle many of us. They are important because they help frame the parameters of the research. Let me be clear. A research problem is the issue or gap in knowledge that the researcher wishes to address. It articulates the issue or problem and provides a background and context to the research. It also identifies the gap in knowledge or practice and the negative consequences if such a problem is not addressed. The research question, on the other hand, is very specific, focused, is a very specific focused question regarding the study and aims to answer the issue of specific testable questions that the research will attempt to answer. It has a narrower focus than the problem statement, and directs the researcher by asking specific questions about the problem, often leading to hypothesis development. For clarity again, let us understand that the research question is derived from a well-defined research problem. Many PhD students, including myself at that time, get bogged down in the research program because of failure to articulate a research question, a research problem, and a question with clarity. Part of the cause of this dilemma is a poor understanding of the subject matter which they wish to study. Many of us as students proceeded to articulate a research problem with scant knowledge of the subject matter and the different principles on which that subject matter was based. Indeed, literature review is the most underrated part of the pre-writing process. Many of us will walk to the professor and say, "Professor, I want to study this, I want to study that," when actually we have no grasp of the subject matter. So if you want to succeed, you first must become a subject matter expert. There is no shortcut. And very many times when we have the viva voce process and we bring in the subject matter experts, you will find that somebody has spent 6 years doing the wrong thing because they did not become a subject matter expert first. Again, there is the issue of the philosophical paradigm. This defines how the researcher will approach the study, and it is closely connected to the research problem as it influences how the problem is understood and addressed. The philosophical paradigm informs the researcher's worldview and the context in which they see the problem. But the research problem itself can lead a researcher to adopt different research paradigms. The way that the problem is stated reveals the philosophical stance and assumptions about the problem of study, i.e., what is the nature of reality? that is ontology. 2, how is knowledge acquired? That is epistemology. And 3, the researcher's values and ethics. That is axiology. I don't have the luxury of delving into these terms, but if you are learning or embarking on the process of being a PhD student, then one of the things you must become a master of is inquiry. So I have no doubt that you will, as you proceed on this journey of the PhD, be able to use these words or philosophical paradigms comfortably. Ontology, epistemology, axiology. Others include methodology here, which I will talk about. So for instance, a problem focused on objective measurement and quantifiable data might lead a researcher towards a positivist paradigm, while a problem seeking to understand subjective experiences might point to an interpretivist paradigm. So the problem statement also guides the selection of research methods. A problem requiring in-depth understanding of social phenomena might lead to qualitative methods, while a problem requiring statistical analysis might favor quantitative methods. The way the problem is framed and the language used can reveal the researcher's pre-existing beliefs and assumptions about the topic, which in turn can be linked to a specific philosophical paradigm. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not advocating for any of these philosophical paradigms. It is you, the researcher, to justify which paradigm you are going to use. Are you going to use a positivist paradigm or an interpretivist paradigm? One can argue for either of these, but the way the problem is defined and the way that the data will be collected will help you understand what is the best paradigm. A lot of the problems of the world cannot be fitted into one clear model. So it is important that one is able to also understand the different aspects of these paradigms. This then leads me to the question of theory. Now you can see why I said at the beginning that there are so many things, and I can only talk a bit about each of them. So, what is theory? Theory is the answer to queries of why. Theory is about the connections among phenomena. A story about why acts, events, structure, and thoughts occur. Theory emphasizes the nature of causal relationships, identifying what comes first, as well as the timing of such events. Strong theory delves into underlying processes, so as to understand the systematic reasons for a particular occurrence or non-occurrence. A good theory consists of a set of logically connected arguments which explain and predict. Theory is not references. Theory is not data. Theory is not a list of variables or constructs. Neither is it diagrams or hypotheses. But it is a credible story that can be used to explain the phenomena that we observe. If you have traveled around the world, one of the most outstanding phenomena you will recognize is that apart from people in different parts of the world looking the same, the level of development in those different parts of the world you have visited is not the same. So one can ask, what is a theoretical explanation of why some countries are so poor and others are so rich? Take Uganda and Colombia, for example. Both countries are on the equator. Both countries produce coffee. But the income per capita for Uganda is about $1,200. And the income per capita for Colombia is about $8,000. What is different in these two geographies? Is it the water? Is it the mindset? Is it the leadership? So, what is a credible theory that one would use to explain the occurrence or non-occurrence of the type of development that is in Colombia, in Uganda? So, a theory is a rational type of abstract or generalized thinking, or the results of such thinking. Theories drive the exercise of finding facts, rather than of reaching goals. To formulate a theory or to theorize is to assert something of a privileged epistemic status, to explain why things are the way they are, which is manifested in the traditional scholarly hierarchy between theorists and those who merely labor among the empirical weights. In so doing, a theory provides a fixed point upon which analysis can be founded and action can be performed. So when you are studying on your PhD, your professors are going to ask you, come up with a theoretical explanation, a logical explanation of whatever you are studying and how you expect to use or define, come up with variables that you are going to interrogate with regards to that research. So that is why theory is important at this level. What is the explanation of what you are doing? And that theory should then lead you in the development of the conceptual framework. But again, one must go back to what I have said. A lot of our problems at the beginning of research are because we have not had enough exposure to the literature. Very many times when we arrive and want to start doing our PhD programs, the first thing we say is, I want to do this thing in 2 years and finish it. At the same time, we have this contradiction that what I'm studying, I am probably the first person to study it. I must disabuse you of this thought process. One, there's hardly anything new that you are studying. You are simply studying what others have studied. So instead of reinventing the wheel, one would expect that you obtain clarity regarding the arguments and postulates in the field of study. If you have done so, then you will arrive at the issue of research methodology. Having defined the research problem and articulated the research question, one must decide how they are going to find answers or explanations for the matter of interest. A problem requiring in-depth understanding of social phenomena might lead to qualitative methods, while a problem requiring statistical analysis might favor quantitative methods. However, the same problem can be approached from differing philosophical paradigms. For instance, if one is studying poverty, one can study poverty by looking at the qualitative attributes of poverty and using those qualitative attributes to explain that poverty. But also, one can use a positivist approach or paradigm by collecting data points regarding the attributes of that poverty. For instance, the intake of protein, the amount of education received, the access to facilities like water which improve the quality of life, and these can be quantified to predict from a positivist paradigm. So the paradigm really is a function of how you think the problem can best be solved. And over time we have learned that when we are studying in the social sciences, it is not easy to find positivist explanations of human phenomena, because human phenomena has so many facets. Alternatively, one may need, therefore, to use a mixed methods approach to address the research questions they have set. Research methodology describes the techniques and procedures used to identify and analyze information regarding a specific topic. It is the process by which researchers design their study so that they can achieve their objectives using the selected research instruments. It includes all the important aspects of research, such as design, data collection methods, data analysis methods, and the overall framework within the research is conducted. Is it a survey? Is it an ethnographic study? Is it a case study? What kind of study is it? Again, all those have to be decided by you. I have no prescription. Methodology then is the study of how one investigates the environment and validates the knowledge gained. Methodology in and of itself is a philosophical paradigm. It attempts to answer the question, how do I go about discovering the answer, reality, in respect of the question I have formulated? Methodology then, as a philosophical paradigm, is that which is the one which one adopts in their quest to answer the question at hand. So methodology is important, along with epistemology and axiology, as we have said. Let me bring it closer home by talking about research paradigms for your PhD studies. To conduct research with rigor and clarity, one needs to have a clear view or framework of how the world works. But this often is a problem because, in the words of one scholar, those who know do not teach, and those who teach do not know. So this framework of view of how the world works is also called a paradigm in itself, and defines the researcher's beliefs and assumptions about reality. One of my best examples and experiences is in teaching accounting at the university and also being a practicing accountant, and looking at what went on in the world of academia versus what actual practice was about. My partner is here, and I think he has experienced the same problem between what we teach and what we do. I do hope that changes are taking place, and even the training that we do in the university is beginning to realign itself with actually what we practice. I recall going through the whole of BCom without having a good appreciation of standards. Beyond studying the conceptual framework, our teachers did not tell us much about the application of those standards in how we prepared accounts. And then getting into practice and realizing that everything had to conform to a standard. So it is in that context that I say that those who know do not teach, and those who teach do not know. So that is part of the problem we need to address. So a research paradigm then is about meaning making. How do you make meaning of events? This requires us to be careful about these research paradigms because they are the lenses through which we view the world, and that we are able to introduce or eliminate bias in our research process. Usually, our worldview is defined or colored by what we know. In my language, in my culture, they say that he who has not traveled will always believe that his or her mother is the best cook. Often, we tend to fall in love with what we have written and fail to adduce a critique of our ideas. So when very many of us as PhD students were told that we had written rubbish, the first thought was that our supervisors hated us. So part of the process of being a good PhD student is to be able to accept criticism, to develop a thick skin, and to also appreciate that there could be alternative explanations to the ones we want to profile. A lot of people get angry when they are told that actually they are wrong. And in the social sciences, it is very difficult to be right. So the research process then is driven by a confirmatory bias in which we strive to prove that our original thoughts and ideas are universally true, even when they are not. So, under a positivist paradigm, we tend to approach our work with the belief that there is a single reality that can be measured and understood. One of the biggest fallacies about underdeveloped countries is that people do not save. And a lot of economics we have studied in school is based on saying that we are poor because of a low savings or poor savings culture. But our people do save. If you have happened to live in the village, you will find that people save through keeping cattle, through keeping goats, through keeping their hens, and also not harvesting some of the food or growing food which will stay for a long time, like cassava, or having granaries. So how then does one come with a different worldview and say that people do not save? And we also regurgitate that and say actually Africans do not save. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call ethnocentrism in research. And you need to understand it, that how are we defining the problem? Usually the worldview is about ethnocentricity. In these circumstances, we are inclined to adopt a quantitative approach to our study through the development and testing of hypotheses. The research process for a positivist paradigm studies tend to propose an empirical hypothesis, which is then supported or refuted through the data collection and analysis. Positivists believe that their approach to research is objective, is statistical, and statistical significance is all that matters. This call the deductive approach, which is theory-driven and assumes that the results of a quantitative test experiment can be generalized to similar situations. So because people do not have money in the bank, we will form a generalized conclusion that Africans do not save. And that is a fallacy. And we live with this fallacy, and these are some of the things that we must begin to think about in order to revolutionize the research we are doing. An alternative approach to positivism is interpretivism. Here the researcher posits the existence of multiple realities rather than a single reality. This research paradigm is mostly used in qualitative studies in the social sciences. And that is where we mostly align. The basic assumption here is that human behavior is complex and it cannot be defined by use of one particular probabilistic model. Knowledge is constructed by observation and meaning-making of the interactions between individuals, dyads, and groups. Dyads are relationships like father and son, mother and daughter, teacher and student, and so forth. This approach is also called an inductive approach, where we start with a specific set of observations and work towards developing a theory or explanation of phenomena. Out of these main research paradigms, others like pragmatism, constructivism, post-positivism, and transformatism have evolved. I do not have the luxury of breaking this down, but the diligent PhD student would be well advised to study and understand them. Please do not worry, this paper is already with Peter. I don't know if he has shared it. He will share it definitely. So that brings me to theoretical and methodological paradoxes. And you can begin to see that I do not know if I have done justice to all the other things that I have talked about, because the topic itself was a mouthful. So I can only touch each and every bit on the surface. So a paradox occurs when two or more explanations, ideas, that is, those are theoretical, or approaches, designs, those are methodological, result in an inherent contradiction. At the theoretical level, we may have a framework of explanations that we expect to use to solve a research problem. However, these opposing ideas may create tensions that conflict our explanation. For example, during the 1990s, companies were enamored with the idea of younger CEOs as drivers of change and innovation. But at the same time, the data showed that companies run by younger CEOs were more unstable and likely to experience governance problems. I don't know if you have read a book called Robert Feder about Barings Bank and its collapse. So thus we had two schools of thought arguing for change because it was good for growth on the one hand, and stability on the other because it made stock markets calmer. The school that argued for calmer stock markets felt that it was better to have a steadier hand at the helm than to have a younger CEO managing the company. So explaining how best to go about growing a business in those circumstances posed a fundamental dilemma. What was the best way to explain companies that were successful? Methodological paradoxes arise from design of the study, data collection methods, and analysis techniques themselves. For example, a highly precise statistical design might paradoxically reduce the likelihood of finding statistically significant results, making its success weak and the collaboration it yields even weaker. We are always talking about tests of significance, but precise tests of significance, such as those using p-values, can fail to indicate the magnitude or practical importance of a difference if they are influenced by sample size, or where they do not capture the underlying effect because they focus on a binary result of significant or not significant, while ignoring all underlying effects in the test. So, when you use these statistical tests of significance, when you use all these structural equation models and so forth, be careful about the implications and the contradictions that ignore all the other things. Let me conclude by saying this. To navigate these paradoxes, PhD students and researchers need to be widely informed and become the first critics of their work. Academic rigor means that A, each assumption or statement we read or write must be challenged as to veracity and validity. And that B, we need to remain objective and alive to the reality of our propositions or hypotheses not being confirmed by the data. I have said, I don't know how many people have done PhD work and not confirmed what they started with. So when we're doing PhD work, we strive to confirm the hypothesis that we started with. And we will manipulate the data until it says, yes, this is true. When actually that may not be the fact. So we need to change how we think. That in itself, negative results are a finding that should not negate the research process. Too often, we are fixated on confirming our biases, rather than ensuring that the research process itself is foolproof. And that is where methodology is very important. Are we using the right method? And our results are not spurious. So as we grow the school's research agenda, it will become more pertinent that we focus on issues of validity, i.e., measuring what we intend to measure, and reliability, that is replicability of our results. I thank you so much for listening to me, and I wish you all the best in your research programs and agenda. For those who will use my few comments to progress their work, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for listening to me.
PhD students, I believe you've got a marking scheme for your presentation today.